interesting fight on the main card of this weekend's UFC on ABC 3. We have the 14th ranked to be specific, the Leech, Li Jingliang, taking on the formerly ranked King of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikhov. And for Salikhov, his nickname's the King of Kung Fu, which is a martial art that Bruce Buffer always shouted out before Roy Nelson did his belly rub on the top of the cage. Well, I guess it would have been before he did that.
A Kung Fu fighter.
He was a Kung Fu fighter, but for Muslim Salikhov, he's a Wushu Sanda fighter, and he's not just a Wushu Sanda fighter, he is regarded as the best Wushu Sanda fighter of all time. And if you don't believe me, go watch some of those fights. In kickboxing or just overall striking, his record is 185 wins, 13 losses, and 1 draw. In 2008, at the appendage to the Beijing Olympic Games, Muslim Salikhov won gold. He is widely regarded as one of the best pure strikers in striking fashion, and in MMA, that's guided him to an 18-2 overall record. And you watch this guy's fights, to get into the UFC, Matt, who did he beat?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
You can't remember off...
You have notes in front of you. I do this for my head.
You can't remember who it was, but if you go and watch it, it was that spinning head kick knockout win over Melvin Gillard. He then got out-wrestled by Alex Garcia and submitted, so a lot of people thought, hey, this guy isn't going to be much. But he beat Ricky Rainey, Bellator's formerly owned Wonderboy teammate. He beat Nordin Taleb by finish. Then he's beaten Laureano Staropoli, Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos in one of the worst fights you can watch. And then Francisco Trinaldo in a fight where he got out-wrestled by Trinaldo, who kind of pushed him down into one of the takedowns. He also landed one of the most wicked combos. As Trinaldo entered in, you had Mr. Muslim Salikhov land a short right hand that stunned him, and then he went Super Saiyan and just went bam, 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 landed 4 punches, dropped him, ended up on top, finished the round on top in the first round. But Matt, for Muslim Salikhov, it's just inactivity that's kind of plagued him throughout his UFC career. The same can be said for Li Jingliang. But Matt, I think this is a wild fight. I think you go crazy. I think you drink like a Faygo and you get wicked and weird, because I think we're in for an interesting fight this weekend.
Blueberry Fuego, that's all I can think of right now. This is a really fun fight, but this is my thing with Muslim Salikhov. He's not in his prime anymore, no matter what you think of him. He just isn't. He is a little bit slower, he is a little bit more gun-shy, but he can still get wins at the UFC level, because I do agree with you. He is so good at what he is good at that he just knows how to translate his skills in MMA, and I think that's a really important thing. It's like when people were calling, hey, Sean Strickland, he's going to take down Alex Pereira, and we were here saying, well, he doesn't normally go for takedowns. I doubt he's just going to do that all of a sudden. It is the truth. You're not going to become something that you haven't been throughout your tenure as an MMA fighter, and I don't all of a sudden expect Muslim Salikhov to go in there and just up his volume and become a much more dangerous fighter in this fight. And I hate it when people disagree with decisions all the time, but I did think Eliseu Zaleski did enough to beat Muslim Salikhov in their fight. I agree with you though, awful fight, low volume, so nobody really won it, for being honest. It's not like either guy was able to separate themselves enough to where they really have an argument for being robbed, but for Salikhov, he does have weird accuracy on his shots, and that's really the thing that I want to talk about, because sometimes, like you said, he will land really nice combinations on the inside, but then at other points, his opponents will leave themselves wide open when they do throw their own strikes, and he'll just sort of wait on the back foot, not really do anything by it, and just the baseball mind in me thinks, okay, he's setting him up for something in the future. Pitchers do this, batters also do this, but for Salikhov, it's almost like there isn't any payoff at the end of it, and it does remind me of when Jan Blachowicz fought Israel Adesanya. Joe Rogan, that whole entire fight was like, wow, look at the feints of Izzy, look at the feints of Izzy. Feints are great, but they're not control and they're not damage. And those are the only two things that judges care about. So for Salikhov, I think what he does is very, very good, but I do think at a certain point he's going to have to switch his style to make it more suited for MMA, because Salikhov right now is a really good fighter outside of the rankings, but at 38 years of age, I'm very curious to see what can he do to actually go on some kind of a run, because he's not just another guy in the organization. You know, he's 18-2, he's been on a very impressive win streak, over impressive names, I should say, maybe not the performances themselves. I'm just very curious as to what does Salikhov do after this performance, because in my mind, Li Jingliang is still on a title path. I know he lost to Chimaev, but I still think Li Jingliang every morning wakes up thinking, how can I become welterweight champion?
Yeah, the weirdest part about this, and I mentioned it, so both these guys have the same problem. For Muslim Salikhov, again, it's inactivity. Like 1 fight in 2018, 2 fights in 2019, 1 in 2020, and then 1 in 2021. For Li Jingliang, same thing. 3 fights in 2018, 1 in 2019, 1 in 2020, and 1 in 2021. And when you look at Li Jingliang, you think, wow, this guy can mix it up with his striking and his grappling. He came into the UFC from Legacy FC. Legacy merged with RFA to become LFA. He was their champ at welterweight. Love that when a prospect from outside of North America comes in, fights with Legacy. It wasn't just one fight, it was multiple fights, then makes an impact in the UFC. But again, this is the craziest part for Li Jingliang. 9 knockdowns for, 5 knockdowns against.
And not against great fighters either. Not to cut you off and make this mine, but Bobby Nash was able to drop him. Jake Matthews dropped him multiple times. Jake Matthews is a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but some of the fighters who have been able to damage Li Jingliang are not the types of fighters you would think would be able to do it.
The double-edged sword, the kick against David Zavada that ended up finishing him, the finish over Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos, what he's able to do in that fight, that's the con and the pro to the knockdowns. You got to break him down fight by fight. But for Li Jingliang, he's been in the UFC for a long time. 15 fights. He's 10-5. He has 5 fight of the nights. 1 against Frank Camacho. 1 against Jake Matthews. Eye poke gate or eye gouge gate.
It was a great fight, though, to be honest.
Performance bonuses against Santiago Ponzinibbio, where he landed that straight shot, finished him. Zaleski, Zavada, and Zach Otto. So he has trained a lot out of China Top Team. He's really been a mentor for a lot of fighters coming into the UFC. And then on the flip side, getting ready for this one and acclimating himself to the States, he's been training out of Killcliff FC. It's a stupid name, and I'm still not used to it. Robbie Lawler hanging out with him a lot, which is interesting.
Good training partner.
You like to see that. But again, the one thing I see out of Li Jingliang that could get him caught in this fight, he overextends a lot in his shots, and he leaves his head out and then throws his arms. You do that against Muslim Salikhov, you get knocked out. The counter to that is Li Jingliang leads in a lot of his fights, and Muslim Salikhov doesn't. However, Muslim, even at 38, I thought against Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos, as close as that fight was, I don't care who you thought that won, it's a win or a loss, whatever. Muslim looked really slow and old in that fight. Against Trinaldo, who I get it.
Another old and slow guy.
Trinaldo's in his 40s, but he pressures the action. And in that fight, on every single in-between, Salikhov landed with reckless abandon. And the other thing is, Salikhov in some of these fights against lesser fighters has been able to get the takedowns against Staropoli. The one against Trinaldo that I count as a real takedown, because one of them, against Trinaldo, he just pushed him and then he landed on top. It was a takedown, but it wasn't much of one. Salikhov can incorporate those bits to his game, but it's not his main part. It is the flashy striking, the speed, and the accuracy. So I love this matchup for what it's worth. Both guys' average fight time is less than 15 minutes. There's a lot of finishes out there, but I think these guys stylistically match up very well. Height-wise, size-wise, and everything all in between.
No, and I agree a lot with what you said about Li Jingliang leading the dance. I think that's going to be really important for this fight because Salikhov does like to strike on the back foot, and sometimes he can be almost uncomfortable closing distance himself because he is wary of the counter shots from his opponent. If Li Jingliang is moving forward, boxing you, that's a really tough place to be in. Like, I think a lot of Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos, Li Jingliang made him look like he didn't even belong in the UFC. That was one of the most one-sided fights I've ever been excited for in my whole life. Jingliang got it in the inside, made it ugly, used uppercuts really well in that matchup, and I really do think that's a technique.
I was the one that put him down. I said a straight shot for some reason. It was an uppercut and tight.
And that's what I think is going to be really important in this fight, too, because Salikhov's someone who likes to have a very high guard. He brings his elbows up to his eyes. That's the way I always think about it with a high guard, because your arms are very high. Li Jingliang is the type of guy who loves to go to the body with his kicks, goes to the body with his boxing combinations, and when he's not afraid of the offensive takedown from his opponent, is much more willing to get into a brawl, and I think those are all situations that are just really tough for a 38-year-old Muslim Salikhov to deal with. If he was 5 years younger and a little bit more aggressive, I would have a much better time picking Salikhov, but the issue is, he looked great against a 40-year-old who used to be a lightweight, who doesn't really belong in this weight division. I don't think that's enough for me to be confident in you to then go on to beat Li Jingliang, who, yes, he didn't look good in the Chimaev win, or the Chimaev loss, but no one looks good against Khamzat Chimaev other than Gilbert Burns.
Like Dos Anjos against Fiziev last night, you saw the cut on Dos Anjos' arm. You heard his coach saying, hey, stop blocking the kicks with your arm. What do? Just let them hit you? But when you do watch this fight, Li Jingliang holds his hands about mid-range. They're not really high, they're not really low, so you can try and block everything in between. Muslim Salikhov's best shot is his right kick to the body, and he throws it like Joe Rogan on Instagram. You know just a big noise?
George St. Pierre, I don't know if you know this, but I'm one of the great spinning back kickers of all time.
The big noise, though, for Salikhov in his fights, his body kicks are legendary. He's an honored master of sport in Wushu Sanda. He's also a master of sport in complex martial arts. When we look at the odds in this fight, my guy, Muslim Salikhov, a guy that I do talk about a lot, open -140, -175 for Li Jingliang off his loss where he didn't land a single anything against Khamzat Chimaev. +120 at open, +145 now, Matt. We have a look at the Topology votes. They're a surprise to us as they are to you. Muslim Salikhov's a favorite, so I'll say over-under. I think it's close. I'm going to say over-under 65% Salikhov.
I'm going to say under. I think Jingliang's going to be the favorite.
No. 740 total votes. 69% Salikhov, 79% by decision for the 31% that have Li Jingliang, 34% by decision, 59% by knockout. What? Really?
He knocked out Algeo, who had never been knocked out.
He knocked out Algeo, and he did knock out Santiago Ponzinibbio on those close-range shots. Just to me, Muslim Salikhov in tight's a guy that you don't mess around with. Obviously, Jingliang's been able to do those things.
Santiago's so much better than him.
Santiago was coming off a long layoff,
but still, it's a guy who was in his prime, though. This is the thing. If Li Jingliang loses this fight, it's because he's pursuing a win and gets hit by a big shot. If Salikhov wins this fight, it's probably going to be on the back foot reacting to what Li Jingliang's doing. That's fine, but I would much rather side with the guy who's pushing the action throughout the fights. And with Salikhov, I think he has average punching power. I really don't think he has, top tier, upper echelon punching power. This could be the fight where I'm wrong, because Li Jingliang doesn't have the greatest chin of all time, like you had established with the knockdowns. I didn't realize he had been dropped himself 5 times. I knew it was quite a few, but 5 is a concerning amount. I still think he's the much better boxer, though, when it gets on the inside. Salikhov is a great striker, but when you're a great striker, it means you use every single part of your body, and that includes kicks. Li Jingliang fights with a lot of pressure, which does eliminate the kicks from a lot of his opponents. If Santiago Ponzinibbio can't even kick you to the leg or to the body, I do think his pressure is going to eventually get to Salikhov, similar to what it did his last 2 upper echelon opponents he was able to beat.
I like Li Jingliang in this fight. I think he's going to be able to boogie woogie woo his way to a win if you're a big ICP fan. But when I do look at this one, I mean, Jingliang, he pressures, but he doesn't throw a lot of volume, but neither does Muslim Salikhov. So each guy has to make those power shots count. Again, both guys' average fight time is less than 15 minutes, so we could very well see a finish in this one. Maybe that's what you want to go with. I do like Li Jingliang ever so slightly. A little bit more volume, a little bit more well-rounded, but I'm really eager to see this fight because I've been hyping up Muslim Salikhov in our videos since we were 2 studios ago. So exactly. I can't wait for this one. You know I'm excited about it. I'm going to be watching the Saskatchewan Roughriders more than likely as this fight's going on.
I saw Darian Durant in his prime. It was beautiful.
Darian Durant, and then last weekend there was a guy that took out the quarterback at the knees. So that was disgusting. But when it does come down to this fight, both of us in agreement with the Leech. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. A couple of big fights left on this card, including perennial main event, co-main eventer Michelle Waterson taking on Amanda Lemos, and in the main event, Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.